Welcome back to All Things Creepy. I'm your host, Micah James. And there's just two things I want to touch upon before we really dive into this week's episode. First and foremost, I know my audio has been a little bit wonky the last 2 or 3 episodes, but the wire that attaches to my microphone and plugs into my computer damaged to the point where I can no longer use that cord, and so now I'm waiting for my replacement cord. So I'm hoping that's coming in by Monday or Tuesday. So hopefully by next episode I won't be using either my phone or my video microphone. So hopefully by next episode my audio is going to be better. Now that said, this week I'm talking about experiments that have happened throughout history. Well, I'm talking about 5 of them at least. These are human experiments that I will be talking about. And the reason why I bring that up is just in case you are sensitive to this information. I'm not going to be upset if you choose to skip this episode. You can always come back next week. I am probably planning on doing a few different creepypasta episodes or even an iceberg chart. So in case this episode is not your speed, just come back next week. Now, with that being said, this will probably be a shorter episode if I went in depth with any of these experiments, we really would be here all day, so I tried to hit the important notes on this. The first one I chose is the Little Albert experiment. A man named John Watson had a theory that we were all born as blank slates. So in 1920, he decided to test this theory with the help of a graduate student named Rosalie Rayner. This experiment was conducted on a 9-month-old baby who was given the nickname of Albert B. This experiment took place at Johns Hopkins University, where the baby's mother worked as a wet nurse. Albert's mother was paid only $1 for his participation in this experiment. As for the actual procedures, Albert was shown a little white rat. Reports say that he had shown no fear. In fact, he didn't seem to be interested in it at all. As time went on, the researchers would show the baby the small creature and then play a loud jarring sound every single time it was shown. Eventually, Albert showed fear towards any small furry creature, but especially mice. It was also said that he seemed to be afraid of dogs and some foxes, but like I said, it was mostly rats. Albert's identity was unknown until 2010 when it was discovered that it was actually a boy by the name of Douglas Merritt. As it turns out, Douglas wasn't necessarily as healthy as the doctor may have thought he was. He had signs of behavioral and neurological issues. He never learned how to walk or talk, and he died, fortunately, at the age of 6 from hydrocephalus, which basically is just water on the brain. It doesn't seem like Douglas was ever deconditioned, nor is it known if he continued to fear small animals, and it's theorized by some of these reports that it's because he unfortunately died so young. Number 2, I chose the Stateville Penitentiary Malaria Study. Now, this study was started because it was said that anywhere between 60 and 65% of American soldiers suffered from malaria during World War II. Since so many were being affected, the logical next step was to try to find a cure, and if not a cure, at least a treatment. Now, this one might be the least problematic, I guess you could say, experiment on this list. I mean, don't get me wrong, to a certain extent you could argue that it is still very problematic and unethical, but again, compared to some of the others on this list, you can at least kind of understand the intentions that they were going for. So this experiment started in 1944 and continued over the course of 2 years. Over 400 prisoners in the Stateville Penitentiary in Illinois became subjects in this experiment. They were purposefully given malaria so the researchers could treat them with the experimental anti-malarial medications. Like I said, while this was unethical, this really might not be the worst on the list. There really was no ulterior motive beyond trying to find some sort of treatment plan or cure for malaria, and the prisoners were being made aware of what was happening. The subjects were even praised, and some were offered shorter prison sentences in exchange for their participation in this experiment. Number 3, I have to apologize. I tried to look up how to pronounce these people's names, but please, if you know how to pronounce these names, please correct me. Hero Hylas's experiments is what I titled this in my notes. But basically, Hero Hylas was an ancient physician who practiced medicine in Alexandria, Egypt. He is also considered the father of anatomy. Despite his discoveries, what makes him controversial is more so how he made his discoveries. He would dissect bodies publicly with his contemporary Erasistratus. On top of that, there were countless prisoners that were sentenced to be dissected and vivisected as punishment. Hero Hylas would perform these procedures on the dead, of course, and not just prisoners, just bodies in general. However, it is estimated that he did dissect and vivisect at least 600 prisoners in his lifetime. And it's said that he also performed some of these procedures on live humans. Now, our penultimate one is the Stanford Prison Experiment. Now, because this is probably one of the more well-known experiments out there, and it might be the most well-known on the list that I created today, I could probably make a whole entire episode on this, even make it a two-parter, because it did very much affect some parts of pop culture. I mean, it even inspired its own movie that was released in 2015. So it's even still being talked about even to this day in 2024. The actual experiment occurred in 1971 at the Stanford University and was headed by a psychology professor named Philip Zimbardo. He recruited 24 students to be his subjects. Half would be guards while the other half were to be prisoners. Almost immediately, the experiment began to go south. It was in just 2 days, the guards started giving into their authority while the prisoners resisted and revolted, even using their beds as barricades to the psychology's basement door at one point. The guards would force the prisoners to sleep naked on the concrete floor, and on top of that, by the buckets that they would use to relieve themselves. One inmate eventually ended up having a complete breakdown and was just kind of raging, kicking and screaming kind of thing. And it seems like the point of this experiment was that he was trying to figure out if even people with good intentions could get into the power, and this experiment seemed to prove it. And finally, our last experiment is separating twins and triplets. There's no official name for this actual experiment, at least not that one that I could find. So in my notes, that's what I named it, separating twins and triplets, because that's what happened. And this was a secret experiment that took place during the 1960s and 70s. Twins and triplets would be separated and adopted out as singlets. The study was headed by a psychologist named Peter Neubauer and was partially funded by the National Institute of Mental Health. This experiment didn't come to light until 3 identical triplets found each other in 1980. David Kilman, who was one of the triplets, expressed his clear anger towards the experiment as all 3 of them missed out on 20 years together. And I think I read somewhere where the other 2 were very angry themselves with having been unwillingly pulled into this experiment. Neubauer expressed absolutely no remorse when confronted about this experiment. He even went as far to defend himself, saying that he thought he was doing something good for the kids, that he was doing something right by them. He wanted the groups of twins and triplets to develop their own personalities and not have to rely on their sibling or siblings. However, it seems like his true intentions won't be known for a while, as his findings of the experiments are being stored in a Yale archive and won't be until 2066. I know I read somewhere that some of his findings have actually already been published. So if I can find out more about this experiment, I will do a follow-up. And then if I'm still alive, kicking and doing this podcast, I will definitely update you guys on what exactly his findings were. But anyways, that's what I have this week. I know it's on the shorter side. I am trying to make these episodes a little longer in case people have longer commutes. So I'm hoping that next week I'm hoping to find an iceberg chart, or even a topic where I can give you guys kind of a longer episode for those who have longer commutes or like to listen to longer episodes. yeah, so with that being said, I will see you guys next week. And please, please be safe out there. If you really feel like you can't be alone, I don't mind if you reach out to me if you just need someone to listen, or try to reach out to a friend that you really truly trust. And I will reiterate, probably for the next 4+ years, please be safe. Just whatever you have to do, just try to be safe out there, guys.